chaps, so we're moving on with trig, and already at the end of last lesson, is this working? Yeah, I've introduced you to the formulas, okay, of what we call double angles. Okay, sine 2x is 2 sine x cosine x. Cosine 2x is, there has actually 3 options. You can use either cosine square x minus sine square x, 2 cosine square x minus 1, or 1 minus 2 sine square x. Okay? Now, just like with the compound formulas, which were very complicated, these are a little bit easier. Even those you get on your information sheets. So there's no 100% need to remember them. However, I really recommend that you remember them, because if you remember them, and then let's say you see something like this in an identity or something like that, you straight away you say, oh yeah, I remember that, and then you can write as cosine 2x. The same thing with these ones, okay? And I can tell you, we use this a lot. I mean, in fact, I'm doing an assignment now at uni, and we use that. I'm using this identity. So these things are usable. Yes, question. Okay, so good question here. So you want to say, hang on, I know that sine square x is 1 minus cosine square x. Why are you telling me that sine 2x is not that? Why is it 2 sine x cosine x?
Oh, yeah.
So why is that? What is the difference between that and that?
Times 2 squared.
Okay, this is 2 times x. This is squared, sine x squared. Okay, so give you an example with numbers. If I had, let's say, sine square 20, okay? If I had something like that, sine square 20, which is sine 20 squared, that you can write as 1 minus cosine 20, cosine square 20. But if I have, let's say, sine 40, then I can write sine 40 as sine 2 times 20, right? I'm just changing, instead of 40, I'm writing 2 times 20. Well, that is, according to this formula, 2 sine 20 cosine 20. So that's the double angle formula. I can convert any angle to half of it, and that's the price I have to pay. I know it's still a bit blurry, and like, why would I use it? Now we're going to do an example on why we're using it. Okay, it will become clearer. First example, we asked to simplify the following terms. Sine 2 theta, it's not sine square theta, it's sine 2 times theta divided by sine theta. We want to simplify. So, yeah, theta is just an angle, okay? I mean, I wrote x, but it could be theta, it could be alpha. I think in your information sheet is alpha, it can be anything. So, instead of sine 2 theta, what can I write? 2 sine theta cosine theta. And then I divide by sine theta, and guess what happens? What can happen? The sine dies. Okay? So we end up having 2 cosine theta, and I hope you agree with me that 2 cosine theta is more simple expression than that.
Yes.
Okay? Cool. Cosine, what is that? Just ask me to do cosine. I didn't finish it. So cosine theta divided by we're working with alpha now. So cosine 2 alpha divided by cosine alpha minus sine alpha. Okay, again, we want to simplify it. Now we've got cosine alpha. Okay, I'll leave this. There's nothing else I can do with the bottom. Okay. Now, the top one, there's 3 options to choose. And I wonder if you can guess which one would be the best one.
The top one.
It will be the top one. Okay. And I'm going to ask you now why. What's the next step to do? Or what can I do now?
Cancel culture.
Okay, can I cross cancel anything now?
No.
So minus. Okay, we can't cross cancel. Okay, I know some of you want to do it. Maybe cross cancel that, and then you got cosine. No. In fact, the answer is correct, but you're not allowed to do that. What Taylor is saying, we need to factorize it, right? So what is cosine square alpha minus cosine square alpha? How can I factorize it? What is that? What is this minus and 2 squares?
It's cos.
Oh my word.
It's a, it's a dots, isn't it? It's a dots. Can you see it? It's a difference of 2 squares. So what shall we write? So cos alpha plus, I always start with plus, but you can do it. Time what? Cos alpha minus sine alpha, and all that we still need to divide by cosine alpha minus sine alpha, and then get our pen, cross cancel that, and we end up having cosine alpha plus sine alpha.
Okay.
We happy with that? So if you made the mistake, and this is a classic student mistake, they will say, okay, that cancel with that, and then I'm going to have cosine alpha minus sine alpha. Okay?
Classic.
Then you'll be wrong because it should really be plus. Okay, so that's wrong. Okay, right, let's pause here. Okay, chaps, next one, we stand here. Guys, cosine 2a plus 1 divided by 2 cosine a. So again, we've got a cosine double angle, which always is a bit more confusing because we have 3 options. What are your instinct telling you? Which formula should we use? First, second, or third?
Second.
Second. Right, why second?
Because I see 2 cos A.
You got a cos A there, so maybe with a little luck you can cancel something here. Let's try and write it down. So I'm going to write 2 cos square A minus 1. I replace cosine 2A with 2 cos square A minus 1. But then I still need to do plus 1.
Yes.
Because I've got plus 1, and luckily that's going to cancel out. And then I'm going to have 2 cos A, okay? And that cancel out, minus 1 cancel out. I've got 2 cos square A divided, let me write in 2 steps. So I'm going to have 2 cos square A divided by 2 cos A. The answer is just cos A. Okay? Pretty easy. Let's pause. Last one of those kind, and then we're going to do something slightly different. So we want to simplify this. Again, I've got one double angle. Okay? So I am going to use the bottom one. Who said that? Okay, well done, Fred, because look, we're going to have, if I use the bottom one, 1 minus 2 sine square x, again, I'm going to cross cancel something here. So I'm going to write 1 minus 2 sine square x plus 2 sine square x. Guys, the answer is just 1. Very easy, isn't it? Okay, now it's not necessarily a hard one. I don't really see, this is the hardest one that I've seen here. Maybe there's other examples, okay? So, now just a couple of questions where they ask you to do something else. So I'm not going to write the instruction. By instruction, write each of the following as a single trig ratio. So we want just one trig. So here I have that sine and cosine. That's it. Okay. So in this exercise, we're basically working backward. Okay. So I can write down sine 2x. That's obviously extremely easy. Let's get something a little bit more difficult. Let's do that. 2 cosine squared.
So this is the
I'm
just checking.
Correct. 2 cosine square x over 2 minus 1. Okay, that requires a little bit more thinking. Again, we want to write that as one single trig.
Cos 2x.
Okay, so it's definitely that one. So it's cos what?
2x over 2.
2x over 2, isn't it? But what is 2x over 2? We're just doubling that. What is 2x over 2? What is 2x over 2?
It's just x.
That's it. So it's just cos x. Okay. How do I know that? What do you mean?
How are you doing it so quickly?
How do you know what? Sorry?
How are you doing it so quickly? I don't know.
Okay, let me pause. Yes, guys. The reason why I do it so quick is that I remember these patterns. That's why I said it's important to be able to remember it. Maybe not perfectly, but to be aware that if I have 2 cosine square something, I've got something like that. Here it is. 2 cosine square minus 1. The only difference between these two, which makes this exercise a bit more difficult, that here I have half an x. So double of half of x is just x. So I don't have 2x here, I've got x. Okay, I'll pause. Yeah.
We don't get this in a form.
A similar question, this time with a number. And I will wait for you to say, what is 1 minus 2 sine square 21? We want to work backward to a single trig.
Okay.
Which formula are you going to use? 1 minus 2
We will
sine.
be using the last
I
one.
would gladly use the last one.
So it's going to be cos, but cos what?
Cos 2x.
2 times 21, in other words, cos 42. Okay? So if we have x here, we're going to have double x, 2x. So if we have 21 here, we're going to have 42.
So why is it 2 times 21?
Oh, he gave us that.
Because let's work back, let's work forward. This is working backward, which is more difficult, okay? If I had cos 42, let's try and write it down. It's going to be 1 minus 2.
Oh, no, I see.
You see, we're working backward. If I've got x here, and I'm working backward, I must have double that. Cool. Right. So, okay, so now what we're doing, it looks very similar, but they're not asking us just to write it to simplify. They're actually asking us to calculate without using a calculator. So we're going to calculate these guys without using a calculator. Now, who knows what is sine 25, 22.5? There's no point. There's no way to do it. But I need to think about special angles. I need to think about the special angles. Now, 22.5 is half of what? 45. And 45, you should know what it is. It's it. So, correct. So if I look at this, or almost. Sine squared 22.5 minus cosine squared 22.5, it's almost cos 25, or almost cos 45. It is, look, this is cos minus sine, this is sine minus cos. So let me go in stages. I can write that as minus, and then I'm going to write cos squared 22.5 minus sine squared 22.5. You see what I've done here first? Guys, please focus. This is getting a little bit more difficult, okay? So, because it's not the right way. I've got cosine squared minus sine squared, not sine squared minus cosine squared. If I put it in brackets, a minus in front of it, then I can write it as cosine squared minus sine squared. We happy so far? Now, I'm going to keep this minus. What is cosine squared minus sine squared? It's simply cosine double the angle, 2 times 25. Okay?
Which equals cos 45.
Which is equal to, but don't forget the minus, cosine 45. And of course, everyone here knows what cosine 45, so I'm not going to ask you. You guys know what it is, right? Okay? Square root 2 over 2. You need to know it, guys. You need to know it.
So you wrote it last time.
Okay? I wrote it last time.
Yes, I remember that.
Okay, are we happy? I'm just going to pause here. Let's move on to this one. This is, okay, so now this should be a little bit easier. Now you know what to do. Which equation are we going to look at? 2 cosine squared 15 minus 1. So second one. So I can straight away write cosine what? Let's do it.
Cosine
2 times 15, right?
which is equal to 50.
Cosine 30. It's square root 3 over 2. Obviously everyone knows that. Right? It's common knowledge. Square cos 30 is square root 3 over 2. We happy with that? The last one is a little bit more difficult. I'm just going to leave it for you, okay? I've got minus 2 sine squared 22.5. Which formula are we going to look at? The last one. But what's the problem?
It's minus 2.
Well, we've got the minus 2 sine squared.
There's no 1.
There's no 1. So what shall we do? I'm just going to leave it, see if you can come up with. So I've got the right answer. When I don't have the 1, I can just add it. I can actually just add it. On condition, if I've added that plus 1, I must minus it afterwards, right? You can all agree that this thing is, I can add plus 1, then a minus 1, then I didn't do anything. The only thing is I did do something. Because this thing I know I can replace with what? Let's go in one step. What is 1 minus 2 sine squared root 25? You already said it's okay? It's going to be cos what? Cos double the angle, cos 45, right? But I'm going to minus 1. I have to minus that one. Okay?
So, but you first find what cos 45
yeah,
is.
we know exactly. So it's square root 2 over 2 minus 1, and you can leave it like that. You can leave it. That's the final answer. If you want, you can do square root 2 minus 2 divided by 2, but both will be absolutely fine. Okay? Are we happy with that, guys? I'm going to do one last question, just because I know when you I kind of teach you something new. You often forget the old stuff. So let's do that. Sine square, I'll use the one they did. Okay, let's do it the way they did. Minus sine square 22,5 minus cosine square 22.25. How should we solve that? What does that equal to? Let you just think about it for a second. Guys, listen to that, okay? When you learn something new, you mustn't forget the old things. What we should do here, because you see, this is minus minus, you can't use that. This is plus minus, you can't use that. What we can do is to get rid of both minus, I can put them in brackets. Minus sine squared 22,5 plus cosine squared 22,5. So, guys, because both of them have minus, I can take the minus out. Now, guys, you don't need any of this to know what sine squared plus cosine squared. You should know that from all done there, okay? Sine squared plus cosine squared. If I have the same angle, that's just simply 1. That's just 1. Sine, okay? Don't forget that. That's an identity. Sine square alpha plus cosine square alpha is always 1. Okay, remember that. Okay? I just have minus, so it's minus root. Okay, we'll finish here. Goodbye.